What if I told you there once lived a princess who never blinked, not once in her entire life? Doctors wrote impossible on her records. Priests called her chosen, and the people whispered she was cursed. But when a night of fire threatened to destroy her entire kingdom, the truth behind her unblinking eyes was finally revealed. Was she a miracle or a prophecy of doom? Stay with me till the end, because this story will leave you breathless. The storm arrived the night she was born. Thunder cracked across the sky above the silver towers of Elara, the royal capital, as if heaven itself was trying to announce her coming. The rain fell in violent sheets, slamming against the castle's ancient stone walls, rattling the stained glass windows, and flooding the courtyards where guards stood shivering at their posts. Inside the queen's chamber, everything was chaos. Midwives rushing, servants whispering prayers, the royal physician barking orders as the young queen clung to sheets, her face pale with pain. "Hold on, your majesty," the doctor urged, sweat running down his brow. "The child is nearly here." The king, standing helplessly by the bed, clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. He had fought wars and survived assassins, but nothing terrified him more than watching his beloved wife cry out in agony. And then silence. The storm outside seemed to hold its breath as a newborn's cry pierced the air. A tiny girl, wrapped in linen, was lifted into the world. The queen's tears turned into laughter, exhausted but overjoyed. The king dropped to his knees beside her, kissing her forehead. But it was not the cry that unsettled the midwives. It was her eyes. The princess's eyes were wide open, not the fluttering, dazed opening of an infant, but wide, unblinking, fixed as if she had been staring at the world since before she was born. Her irises glowed a deep shade of violet, catching the candlelight like polished amethyst. The baby did not blink when a torch flickered before her. She did not blink when the doctor brushed his fingers across her lashes. She simply stared. One of the midwives gasped and dropped the cloth in her hand. "By the saints, she's not closing them." The king frowned, his joy turning into unease. "What do you mean she's not closing them?" The royal physician gently waved his hand before the infant's face. The little princess followed the movement perfectly, her eyes sharp and alert, but she did not blink. Not once. "It must be a spasm," he said quickly, though his voice trembled. "A reflex. She will close them soon." But the minutes passed, and the child never did. By dawn, the storm had broken. Sunlight poured through the high windows, striking the crib where the newborn lay. Her tiny chest rose and fell, her breath steady, but still her eyes remained open. She did not close them in sleep. She did not close them at all. The queen sat upright in bed, her face pale. She had not taken her eyes off the child once. "She hasn't rested since birth," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Why won't she close her eyes? Why does she look at me so knowingly?" The king placed a hand on her shoulder, but even he could not hide his unease. Perhaps she is blessed. Perhaps the gods have given her a gift. The physician shook his head gravely. He had examined countless infants, but none like this. "Your majesties, forgive me, but this is beyond medicine. The child's eyes do not produce tears. The muscles do not respond. She may never blink." "Never?" The queen clutched the blanket, as if it were the only thing holding her together. "I cannot explain it," he admitted. "In the medical records, such a condition does not exist. It is—" he hesitated, then spoke the word no doctor ever dared to speak before royalty. "Impossible." The word spread through the palace like wildfire. Servants whispered it in the kitchens. Guards murmured in the barracks. And by the time the sun set again, the entire city of Avalor knew the strange princess who never blinked. Some called her a miracle. Others whispered she was cursed. Priests declared she must have been chosen by the gods for a destiny beyond mortal comprehension. The queen, however, felt only fear. That night, when the torches were dimmed and the halls grew silent, she sat by her daughter's crib, unable to rest. The baby lay in the moonlight, eyes wide open, staring at the silver beams as if watching invisible shapes dance across the ceiling. "Sleep, my little one," the queen whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Please, just close your eyes. Rest." But the baby did not blink. The queen leaned down, brushing her lips against her daughter's forehead. In that moment, the child's tiny hand reached up and gripped her finger tightly. The queen froze, staring into those endless violet eyes. They were not cold. They were not lifeless. They were awake. Too awake. It felt as if the child could see right through her. Her fear, her sorrow, her hope. The queen's tears fell faster. She gathered the infant in her arms, rocking her gently. "No matter what you are," she whispered, voice trembling, "you are mine, my daughter, my Elara." That was the night the princess was given her name, Elara, meaning the one who sees the stars. In the weeks that followed, the royal court descended into chaos. Scholars from distant lands were summoned. Priests brought holy relics, chanting blessings over the crib. Physicians from the empire, the isles, even the desert kingdoms came to examine her, each left shaking their heads. There is no cure. There is no explanation. This is beyond human understanding. One foreign doctor, frustrated by the king's endless questions, scrawled a single word across his parchment before departing. Impossible. That paper would remain in the royal archives for years to come, a reminder that Elara's very existence defied science. But Elara herself was no less a child than any other. She laughed when the queen tickled her belly. She gurgled when the king lifted her high into the air. She cooed at the sound of music, and she kicked her legs when sunlight streamed across her crib. The only difference was that her laughter, her gurgling, her wonder, all of it, was witnessed through eyes that never closed. And though she was too young to understand it, her wide, unblinking gaze was already reshaping the fate of a kingdom. For some whispered that a child who never blinked would see truths others could not, that she would witness not only the beauty of the world, but also the darkness no one else dared to face. And in the silence of the royal nursery, with her violet eyes fixed on the stars beyond the window, Princess Elara's destiny began. The years passed, but the miracle and the burden remained. By the time Princess Elara turned 5, the whispers in the kingdom had not quieted. If anything, they had grown louder. She had become the child of endless fascination, a subject of rumor in every marketplace, prayer hall, and tavern. Have you heard? She has never closed her eyes, not once. They say she sees spirits in the night. No, fools, she sees the future. Why else would the gods keep her awake? And always in hushed tones. Or perhaps she is cursed. Inside the palace, the queen struggled against that word every day. She tried to shield her daughter from the superstitions of the people, from the curiosity of visitors who would stare too long into the child's violet eyes, unsettled by their stillness. She kept Elara's world filled with laughter, toys, and music. She sang lullabies every night, though she knew her daughter would never close her eyes to sleep. That was the strangest truth of all. Elara slept, but her eyes never shut. When exhaustion finally overcame her, the little girl would lie down, her breathing slowing, her body relaxing, but her gaze would remain wide open, fixed on some distant point no one else could see. It was both peaceful and haunting, like a statue that dreamed. The queen would sit beside her, brushing her daughter's hair from her face, whispering, "Rest well, my star-eyed one." Yet in the pit of her heart, she grieved that her child would never know the simple comfort of darkness, the gentle embrace of closed eyes. Doctors continued their visits, summoned by the king's stubborn hope. One after another, they examined the girl with all the instruments their age could offer. Some tried medicines, drops, or strange machines brought from faraway lands. Others tried superstition, muttering charms under their breath when they thought the king would not notice. But always, the conclusion was the same. Her eyes are healthy, perfectly healthy, and yet she cannot blink. Majesty, I am sorry. It is. The king would slam his fist against the table before they could finish. Do not say it. I am tired of that word. But in the silence of his private chambers, when no one was watching, he too whispered the word that haunted him. Impossible. Elara herself did not understand the fuss. To her, the world simply was as she saw it. She had never known the blur of eyelids, the brief respite of darkness. She saw everything. Always the flutter of wings in the rafters, the crawling of ants in the cracks of the floor, the tremble of her mother's hands when she thought no one noticed. The gift or curse of never blinking meant Elara noticed everything. At first, this made her a curious and joyful child. She could follow the flight of a butterfly longer than any other, watch the stars move across the night sky, without missing a single flicker. She laughed easily, asked endless questions, and spoke of things that startled the adults. "Why does Uncle's smile shake when he says he is happy?" she once asked her mother. The Queen's heart froze, because it was true. Her brother had been hiding grief. Another time, Elara tugged on the nursemaid's hand and whispered, "You dropped the bread in the garden this morning. That is why the ants are marching into the kitchen." The nursemaid turned pale. Elara saw everything, and the older she grew, the more others feared her gaze. When she was 7, children from noble families were brought to the palace to play with her, but the games never lasted long. "Why won't you blink?" one boy demanded, his voice trembling. "I don't need to," Elara replied simply. "It's not natural," another whispered. By the end of the afternoon, the children avoided her, running to the corners of the garden while she sat alone beneath the willow tree. Her hands clutched her doll, her violet eyes fixed on the rippling pond. From a window above, the Queen watched, her heart breaking. She wanted to run to her daughter, to hold her, to promise her she was not alone. But she also knew this was a world her child would have to grow up in, a world that did not forgive what it could not understand. That night, as she tucked Elara into bed, the Queen whispered, "You are not cursed, my love. You are extraordinary." "But why am I different, Mama?" Elara asked softly. Her voice was steady, but her unblinking eyes shimmered with something deeper, loneliness. The Queen swallowed hard. "Because the world needs you to be. One day you will see why." Elara said nothing. She only turned her gaze toward the stars outside the window, as if searching for the answer herself. The king, meanwhile, grew restless. He could not bear to see his daughter so isolated, so burdened by whispers. His solution was to push her harder, to mold her into someone the world could not ignore. At 8 years old, Elara was given lessons not only in reading and writing, but also in diplomacy, swordplay, music, and history. The tutors marveled at her memory. She never forgot a face, never lost her place on a page, never missed a detail. Her gift made her a brilliant student. But brilliance came with a price. At night, when the castle slept, Elara sat alone in the library, her wide eyes scanning the shelves of ancient books. She read by candlelight until dawn, for why should she rest when her mind was so awake? Knowledge flooded her like a river, with no dam. She absorbed it all, yet the weight of it pressed down on her small shoulders. She began to ask herself questions no child should ask. Why do people lie? Why does war happen? Why do the priests say the gods are merciful when I see so much sorrow? Her unblinking eyes saw truths too raw, too sharp for her age. And though the world admired her intelligence, no one noticed the ache that grew quietly in her heart. On her 10th birthday, the Queen gave her a gift unlike any other, a silver mask delicately crafted to cover her eyes. "It will help just sometimes," her mother said gently, fastening it over Lara's face. "When you wear this, people will not feel so frightened. They will not see your eyes. They will only see you." Elara touched the mask, her fingers tracing the cool silver. "But, Mama, if I hide my eyes, am I still me?" The Queen kissed her forehead. "You are always you. And one day, my star-eyed daughter, the world will see that too." Elara smiled faintly, but as a mask settled over her face, she whispered so softly her mother almost didn't hear. "Then why does it feel like I am disappearing?" And though the Queen held her close, she could not answer, for deep inside, she too feared what the world's rejection might do to her daughter's soul. That night, long after her parents had left her chamber, Elara removed the mask and sat at the window, staring at the endless night sky. The stars glittered like shards of glass, cold and eternal. And for the first time in her young life, the princess who never blinked felt the heavy weight of her destiny pressing down upon her. She was different. She was seen. But she had never felt more alone. By the time Elara reached her 16th year, The word miracle had become a chain. The people of Avalora no longer whispered about her. They proclaimed her. Priests called her the Ever-Watcher. Scholars describe her as the living proof of divine intervention. Poets wrote verses about her violet eyes, and travelers came from distant lands just to glimpse the princess who never blinked. Yet behind the palace walls, the truth was far from divine. Elara lived her life as if caught in a cage of glass. She was admired, yes. Respected, yes, but never understood. In the palace courtyard, she often walked alone, her silver mask resting on her lap as she sat by the fountain. Children from noble families had long stopped playing with her. Courtiers bowed deeply, but averted their eyes when she passed, as though looking into her unblinking gaze might reveal their secrets. And perhaps it would, for Elara saw everything. She saw the way the captain of the guard's hand shook whenever he held a sword, an old injury he pretended was healed. She saw the flicker of resentment in the servant girl's eyes as she curtsied, the bitterness of someone trapped in service. She saw the king, her father, forcing a smile at banquets, hiding the exhaustion that weighed heavier on him each year. It was as though the world had been laid bare before her. Every lie, every mask, every crack in the armor of people's souls. And it was too much. One night, Elara confided in her mother. They sat together in the queen's chamber, the firelight painting soft gold across the walls. Elara's long hair spilled like dark silk over her shoulders. Her eyes, always open, always searching, shimmered with unspoken sorrow. "Mother," she whispered, "do you ever wish I were normal?" The queen froze, her needlework slipping from her hands. "Normal?" "Yes." Elara's voice cracked for the first time in years. "To blink, to sleep with closed eyes, to play and laugh without people staring at me as if I were some creature from a story." The queen reached for her daughter's hands, holding them tightly. "You are not a creature. You are my miracle." Elara shook her head. "Miracle? Curse? What is the difference if both make me alone?" Tears burned the queen's eyes, but she forced them back. She wanted to tell her daughter she was wrong, that she was loved, cherished, adored. But she knew those words would not erase the loneliness etched into the girl's heart. So instead, she whispered, "One day, Elara, you will understand. One day, you will see why the gods gave you this gift. And when that day comes, you will not feel alone anymore." Elara wanted to believe her, but as the night stretched on, her violet eyes turned once more to the stars beyond the window, searching for an answer the heavens refused to give. The burden of her gift grew heavier with time. When her father brought her to council meetings, she saw the hidden greed behind the polished words of advisers. When she attended festivals, she noticed the hungry eyes of beggars in the crowd, unseen by the nobles who laughed and drank. When she walked through the gardens, she heard the whispers of servants. "She's watching me. She never blinks." It's unnatural. At first, Elara bore with dignity, her back straight, her silence strong. But as the years dragged on, the loneliness hollowed her. She became withdrawn, speaking less, smiling rarely. She still studied, still learned, still observed, but inside, her heart grew tired. What good was a gift that only built walls around her? On her 17th birthday, a prophecy was delivered. An old seer from the mountains, her eyes clouded with age, was brought to the palace at the king's request. She looked at Elara long and hard, unflinching before the girl's violet gaze. For once, Elara felt as though she were the one being seen. "The child who never blinks," the seer rasped, her voice echoing in the great hall, "was born not for herself, but for the world. She will witness what others cannot. She will see through the smoke of lies, through the fire of chaos, through the veil of death itself." The courtiers gasped. The queen clasped Elara's hand, but the seer's words grew darker. "She will bear sorrow heavier than mountains. She will watch what no soul should ever have to watch. And yet because of her, a kingdom will survive, a people will live, and hope will rise from ash." Silence fell across the hall. The king demanded, "What do you mean? When? How?" But the seer only shook her head. "The stars did not reveal the time, only the truth. Guard her well, Majesty. For the day of fire will come, and with it, her burden will become her destiny. And then, before anyone could ask more, the old woman collapsed. By dawn, she was dead. The prophecy clung to Elara like a shadow. She tried to live her days as before, studying, walking the gardens, reading late into the night. But now, every glance she cast upon the horizon filled her with dread. What was this day of fire? What sorrow would she bear? Her heart, already heavy with loneliness, grew heavier still with fear. And yet, beneath the fear was a spark. For the first time, Elara began to wonder if her difference had meaning, if the pain of her endless watchfulness, the burden of never blinking, was not a curse but a preparation. She was afraid, but she was also curious. And somewhere deep within her, the princess who never blinked began to ready herself for the day when her eyes would see what no one else could. It began with smoke. On a moonless night, when the palace slept in silence, Elara sat awake as always by her window. She had been reading, though the words on the page blurred into meaningless lines after hours of study. Her violet eyes, ever watchful, ever open, drifted beyond the castle walls to the city below, and that was when she saw it, a thin curl of smoke rising from the eastern quarter. At first it was faint, no more than a thread in the darkness, but her eyes, sharper than any, followed it. She saw where it grew, where it thickened, where flames began to lick at rooftops. Her heart froze. She leapt to her feet. "Guards!" she cried, her voice echoing down the corridor. Within moments, armored men rushed to her chambers, bewildered. "The city!" Elara gasped, pointing. "Look, the fire." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. To their eyes, the city looked quiet and dark. "Princess," one said carefully, "perhaps you are mistaken." "No." Elara's voice cut sharp as a blade. "If you wait, it will be too late." Her certainty, her eyes that never lied, shook them. Reluctantly, one soldier ran to alert the captain. Within minutes, the alarm bells were ringing. By the time the first flames reached the night sky, the city was already stirring. The fire spread like a beast unleashed. Ave Laura, with its wooden houses and narrow streets, became a maze of flames. Sparks leapt from rooftop to rooftop, devouring everything in their path. The air filled with choking smoke, the cries of families fleeing, the panic shouts of men throwing buckets of water that did nothing to quench the inferno. And through it all, Elara did not blink. She stood at the highest tower, watching every movement, every spark, every collapse. Her father, the king, joined her, his face grim as he barked orders to the guards. Evacuate the eastern quarter. Get the people to the river. But Elara's eyes saw more than the flames. She saw the narrow alley where children were trapped, coughing in the smoke. She saw the old woman beating at her burning door, unable to escape. She saw the collapsing tower that would soon crush the fleeing crowd. "Father," she cried, grabbing his arm, "send men to Sparrow Street. Children are trapped there, and the bell tower. Pull them away before it falls." The king stared at her, stunned. "How could you?" "Trust me," she begged. And though it went against every instinct command, he did. What followed was chaos, yet guided chaos. Everywhere the flames struck, Elara's voice rang out with impossible precision. To the left, there by the well, save them. The alley, the boy is there, don't let the fire reach him. The bridge, clear it before it collapses. The soldiers, exhausted and bewildered, obeyed without question. And time after time, they found her words true. The children were there. The old woman was there. The collapsing bridge fell just as she had said. Word spread among the people. The princess sees us. She knows where to go. She is guiding us through the fire. Hope, fragile as glass, began to take root in the ashes. Hours passed. The fire raged on, but because of Elara's guidance, countless lives were saved. Families huddled by the riverbank, coughing and crying, but alive. Guards carried children out of burning homes. Men and women looked up at the castle tower, where the unblinking princess stood like a sentinel, her violet eyes shining in the smoke. But the burden was crushing. Every scream she heard pierced her heart. Every face she saw, terrified and burning, etched itself into her memory, never to be erased. Her eyes, which never closed, forced her to watch it all. At one point, she sank to her knees, trembling. "It's too much," she whispered. "I see everything. I can't stop it all." Her mother knelt beside her, clutching her shoulders. "Elara, listen to me. You cannot stop the fire, but you can save the people. That is enough. That is everything." Elara lifted her gaze once more, and though her body shook, her eyes burned brighter. Near dawn, when the flames began to die, a new terror rose. A storehouse near the city's edge, filled with oil and grain, was about to ignite. If it exploded, the blast would level half the district. Elara saw it before anyone else. "Father," she cried, her voice hoarse. "The storehouse, evacuate the men, pull them back." The king did not hesitate. "You heard her. Withdraw." Moments later, the explosion tore through the sky. A tower of fire roared upward, the shockwave rattling windows miles away. But thanks to her warning, the soldiers had escaped. No lives were lost. The people, watching from the riverbank, erupted in cries of gratitude. "The princess saved us. She sees what no one else can. She is our miracle." And for the first time, Elara did not flinch at the word. When the fire finally subsided, dawn broke over a city scarred but alive. Thousands who might have perished had been saved. And though ash clung to her hair, smoke burned her lungs, and exhaustion weighed down her body, Elara still stood, her eyes wide, unblinking, taking the ruin and the hope together. The king placed a hand on her shoulder. His voice, rough with emotion, whispered, "You have done what no army, no council, no king could do. You saved them, Elara. You saved us all." Her mother pulled her into her arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My daughter, my miracle." And for the first time in her life, Elara did not feel like a prisoner of her gift. She felt its purpose. The prophecy was true. The day of fire had come. And because she had borne her impossible burden, a kingdom still stood. The fire left scars upon the kingdom, but also left something greater: faith. When the smoke cleared and the ashes cooled, the people of Avalora spoke not only of destruction, but of salvation. They told the story of the princess who had seen what no one else could see, the princess whose eyes never closed, not even in the face of horror. The city rebuilt with a new devotion. Murals were painted of her standing in the tower, her violet gaze piercing the flames. Children ran through the streets pretending to be Elara, holding their eyes open as long as they could before collapsing into laughter. Priests proclaimed her the ever-watcher, the chosen guardian of the kingdom. But behind the glory, Elara carried the weight of what she had seen. At night, when others slept, she sat in silence, her eyes haunted by the images burned into them forever. The faces twisted in fear, the flames swallowing homes, the cries of those she could not save. Unlike others, she could not blink those visions away. They lived within her, constant and sharp. And yet, alongside the sorrow was pride. For the first time in her life, Elara understood. Her gift was not meant to isolate her. It was meant to protect. One morning, weeks after the fire, her father summoned her to the great hall. The court was gathered, nobles in jeweled robes, soldiers in polished armor, servants pressed against the walls. All eyes turned to Elara as she entered, her silver mask left behind. She walked with her head high, her violet gaze unflinching. The king rose from his throne. His voice, strong but heavy with emotion, rang out. "On the night of fire, when our kingdom trembled, it was not I who saved Avalora. It was my daughter. It was the princess the world called impossible." He paused, his eyes finding hers. "Elara, your gift is no curse. It is no burden to be hidden. It is a light that shines where others see only darkness. Today, I name you guardian of Avalora, the watcher of the kingdom. May all who look upon you remember that what the world calls impossible may yet save us all." The hall erupted in cheers. Elara, Elara, the ever-watcher. And though her heart pounded, Elara stood tall, her unblinking eyes sweeping across the room. For once, the stares of others did not feel like judgment. They felt like trust. Her mother embraced her afterward, whispering through tears, "Do you see, my star-eyed one? The gods did not curse you. They prepared you." Elara held her tightly. "All my life, I thought I was alone. But I was never alone, was I? I was watching over them, even when they could not understand." The queen smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "And now, they finally see you as I always have." Years passed, and Elara grew into her role. She walked among her people, no longer hidden, no longer masked. When disputes rose in the marketplace, she saw the truth behind the words and brought justice. When treaties were signed with foreign kingdoms, she noticed a hesitation in an ambassador's eyes, warning her father before betrayal could strike. When sickness swept through villages, she guided healers to where the hidden infections began, saving countless lives. Her gift, once feared, became the kingdom's greatest strength. And though she still bore the loneliness of seeing what others could not, it was no longer a hollow burden. It was a purpose. One evening, while walking the rebuilt streets of the Eastern Quarter, a little girl tugged at her gown. She was thin with soot-stained cheeks, but her smile was bright. "Princess," the child said shyly, "my mama says you never close your eyes." Elara knelt, her gaze soft. "That is true." The girl tilted her head. "Doesn't it hurt?" Elara paused and smiled gently. "Sometimes, but if I close them, even for a moment, I might miss someone who needs me, and that would hurt much more." The girl's eyes widened. "Then you're not cursed. You're our guardian." Elara touched the child's cheek, her heart swelling. "Yes, I am." That night, in the quiet of her chambers, Elara looked at the parchment still preserved in the royal archives, the one written by the foreign doctor years ago. One word was scrawled across it: impossible. She traced the letters with her finger, then smiled for the first time at the word that had haunted her life. "Impossible," she whispered, "is only what the world has not yet understood." She turned to the window, her violet eyes fixed on the horizon. The stars shone above her, endless and eternal, and she did not blink, for the princess who never blinked no longer feared her gift. She embraced it, and because of her, the impossible had become hope.